Hello lovely people, in today's discussion, Dr. Mensa Otabil talks about the difference between the traditional marriage and wedding. Keep watching.
Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Genesis 2:24. Help us to appreciate what one flesh is.
One flesh is the coming together of a man and a woman. I mean, in the scripture, it is when Adam had accepted Eve. Eve was offered by God and he accepted. And in his acceptance, he made a declaration that she was a part of him. Remember, Adam had no idea where Eve came from because he was asleep when Eve was being made, but he accepted her. And I think that position of acceptance of somebody into your life and making the person part of your life is where the one flesh begins. It also includes the consummation, which is the sexual union between the man and the woman, which also consummates or fulfills the one flesh. But the one flesh starts with acceptance of somebody into your life in a formal way before God, that then creates a union of a man and a woman, which we call marriage now.
Is it possible for people to get married but not make that transition to accepting their lives as one flesh?
Well, I mean, if we look at it from the biblical point of view, it is two individuals who accept each other before God, in the presence of God. That is what we would say brings the union together.
Doc, can you clarify the place of the traditional marriage and the wedding or blessing? There appears to be different schools of thought about when the couple really begins the marriage journey, when it begins.
Marriage is contracted in different ways, in different societies, under different rules. Muslims organize marriage differently. Traditionally, we marry differently. In other societies, marriage is contracted differently. But when we become Christians, we submit everything to God and to Christ. And so much as there would have been a previous way of doing it, Christians consciously endeavor to do things in a way that is closer to the biblical expectation. So my understanding of a marriage is that it must be two people who have accepted each other and are willing to dwell together with each other, making a commitment to each other in the presence of God. Now, that process may happen in a church or may not happen in a church. That means it could be another venue. In Ghana, it is required that the venue should be a registered venue, and churches have predominantly been those venues. But we have our tradition where a traditional marriage takes place. And I recognize that as marriage, but as a Christian, I don't end there because it has to be before God. And this idea of what is before God is what you should be thinking about. And I don't want people to actually be even debating, is the traditional marriage, is the church wedding, the marriage. I think when we do that, we are cheating ourselves of the fullness of an experience that is rich in meaning and in symbolism for the two people who are making the commitment. And just do what is right before God and do it with all full conscience, and don't shortchange yourself along the way with any excuse. It has to be done properly and it has to be done before God.
So in submitting, let's say, a traditional marriage before God or your marriage before God, it is choosing the way it will be done, whether you want to have a full-blown wedding or something small. should be left to the couple.
The two things in my opinion, will qualify as before God. One is a place dedicated to the worship of God. That is first. And second, a person who presides over a Christian service or a Christian worship, we'll call a pastor. These two, I think, creates the before God condition that we have to meet.
Doc, the Bible says that God made the husband the head of the marriage union and the wife the helpmeet, as is captured in Ephesians 2:23 and Genesis 2:18 respectively. What was in God's mind when he addressed the husband as the head and the wife as the head?
Well, I mean, in the Genesis, God did not say he is going to make a head. He said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make for him a helper suitable for him. A helper suitable for him. Now, many times people see helper as subordinate, but we forget that God himself is our helper. And we call him our helper. Does it make him subordinate to us? The Holy Spirit is our helper. So the position of helper is not a subordinate position. It's a function of support, which God himself describes as his role in our lives. So that is what we have to see. And then in Genesis, God did not say that Adam is now the head of the woman. Adam himself said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She was taken out of me. She will be called woman. I mean, there is a statement of equality right there, that this is not a superior and a subordinate kind of relationship, but a joint relationship that honors both the male and the female. In the New Testament, symbols are used. The husband is the head. But then we have to find out in what context did Paul say the husband is the head, because he defines what the head is. And he says it's like Christ. And he says that the husband then has to be sacrificial and lay down his life for the wife as Christ did. So that's what a head is. A head is somebody who sacrifices and who lays down his life for the wife. So I think instantly we try to pull all these biblical concepts into our current understanding and our current reality, where a head is a boss. But even if we want to define a head as a boss, there are different kinds of bosses, different kinds of heads of state. Some are dictators, some are collegial, some consult before they make a decision. So the headship is going to be based on a person's own temperament. If he's a dictator, whether you call him head or call him dear, he'll be a dictator, because there are dictators in other jurisdictions who are called dear. And they're dictators. So the title doesn't really mean anything. It's a person who is overbearing. No matter what title you give him, will be overbearing. A person who is generous and kind, no matter what title you give him, will be generous and kind.
So, Doc, are you advocating for equal partnership in the marriage?
Marriage has always been an equal partnership from God's point of view, from the Garden of Eden. It's always been. But in that partnership, the husband plays a role. Because, for example, if a man marries a woman, the children bear the father's name. So that means that in the new family unit that has been created, he is the head of that family. But he's not the head in the sense that he's the highest person there, the biggest person there, and everybody is nothing. I mean, that's not what the headship is all about. It's a leader among equals. He's a leader among equals. And decision-making in the family does not always rest on the head, so to speak. I am married. I can say that Probably about 80% of the decisions made in our home comes from my wife. That the women actually make all the decisions. So it's equality, it is love, it is acceptance, it is trying to work a family together and make it a home that is wholesome.
Look, I think the problem has been because the meaning given to it is to dominate, like the king in his palace and everybody as servants.
Yeah, I think that if people see head that way, then the man has to throw his weight about, bully the wife, bully the children. But is that what Christ is to us? Does he bully us? I mean, because the headship of the husband is based on the headship of Christ. So you have to look at how Christ leads his church and be an example.
It's probably an attempt to use the cultural expression and cloak it in spiritual, a seeming spiritual understanding.
Well, I mean, that mistake happens when we lift the Bible from where it is into our culture and superimpose our cultural understanding on the Bible and say that is what it's saying. But if you read the text and the context within which the text is coming, it may not be saying that at all.
So it's fair to take one word for the headship that the Bible talks about as sacrifice.
Well, we have to look at Christ, how he became the head of the church. And he became the head of the church by dying for the church.
Well, Anthony is certain after a definition, many men will not be very keen on.
I don't think many men will want to be heads. I think they want to be something else.
Look, let's go on to one of the biggest challenges that couples face, and that is one party becoming emotionally attached to another person. It would seem that marriage itself is not a safeguard against that. What can couples do to overcome this threat?
I think that is also why living a chaste life before marriage has its advantages and its value. It doesn't mean if the lives were not chaste, marriage cannot work. But you don't have too many emotional entanglements when you come into marriage if you had lived prepared in that way. But, you know, sometimes life is not straightforward and we go through detours before we get to where we're going. So by the time a person wants to marry, they have had dalliances with different people and have been emotionally invested in them and have been committed. And there are situations where people actually thought they were going to marry somebody and then there was a last-minute breakup and then they fall in love with somebody else or decide to marry somebody else. But emotions are not like light switches. You know, you can't just switch them off. So you find that although you are moving on, there is a part of you that is still hooked up. And we have to be aware of it. I think that everything about marriage and its success is a choice and it's a decision. So at a certain point, you must make the decision. And I know it's not that easy all the time. And that is why it's always important to find somebody who can walk you through a process and have a system of accountability with where you can manage your emotions a little better than allowing the emotions to flood your relationship.
Would you situate this accountability that you mentioned in marriage counseling or an accountability partner?
It could be an accountability partner. It could be a friend who knows you very well, maybe knows even about where your emotional investment is, but whom you allow the person to check on you and ask you difficult questions to determine whether you are managing your emotions well or not. So that accountability relationship can be very useful in helping you to be fully vested in your current marriage, in your relationship.
What about new emotional attachments that develop post-marriage?
First, you don't have to allow that to happen. I think there are rules and protocols we must impose on ourselves. And it's not only in marriage, it's in everything. And we must determine how far we go in conversation. What kind of conversation would you have with somebody you're not married to? And when you see a conversation getting to a certain level, how do you pull back? What are the red flags that you should be engaged in, especially if you work in an office and there is an office mate that is very close to you? You talk about office, and then before you realize you're talking about personal issues. At what point do you cut the conversation and say, we don't talk about this? You have to determine those rules. If you find yourself talking about your marriage partner to another person and conversing about your husband or your wife with a third person, you have to watch it. And as much as possible, you must not enter into any such conversation that brings in your partner in the conversation. It may start even as a positive conversation before you realize you're talking about your dissatisfaction to the other person, and that's where it goes very wrong.
Thank you.
Doc, how important is intimacy in the marriage relationship? And how does romantic needs of a couple change from the early stages to the latter part of marriage?
I know people place a lot of value on sex and its role in marriage. And these days, people get fascinated with all kinds of dramatic expressions in sexual formations and so on. I think if you create a sexual appetite for yourself and for the marriage, and you become very experimental and exploratory, you will get to a point where you can't satisfy each other. And you may then go outside of your marriage. Because if you make sex the god of the marriage, it will consume you. So my advice is, just enjoy each other as much as you can. There's nothing beyond that. And don't create an appetite, either by things you watch, things you read, conversations you hear, that excites your expectation. Because pretty soon you are going to find your husband can't satisfy you and your wife can't satisfy you. And then you're going to look for satisfaction somewhere else. There is a simplicity of life that protects all of us. And we have to go for the simplicity of life. And also when it comes to our sexual life, the simplicity of a man and a woman having a relationship that is mutually satisfying. Adam did not have to read any book to attend any lectures to know how to satisfy Eve or vice versa. But they found a way to do that, and they produced kids. And even if they were not satisfied with each other, there was no comparison. They were happy with each other. So my advice to couples, just be happy with each other. Just be happy. Don't create expectations you cannot meet. Because if you do, your marriage will suffer.
Doc, what about changes that take place because of physical changes, hormonal
I
changes?
feel couples must work their way through. It's a journey for two people. You start maybe in your 20s, you are more vigorous, you are more exciting, they're more spontaneous. You grow into your 40s, you are less so because there are kids and there are all kinds of things taking your expectation. Then you grow into your 60s and 70s, and there are new dynamics that you have to get used to. The important thing is enjoy each other. Enjoy each other, and don't create expectations that cannot be met. Because if you do, you're going to do something very silly some point in your marriage.
Don't make sex a god in your marriage. It will consume you.
Yes, it will. It's a very bad god. It's an evil god, and it will destroy you, yes.
Doc, Apostle Paul encouraged intimacy in marriage, except for consented periods of fasting and prayer. Can you help us to understand this, please?
Yes, because, in the days of Paul, there were people who saw physical intimacy as unclean. And therefore, there are some people who would actually confess their sins after they've had intimacy with their spouse. So Paul, in giving a practical guidance, says, first, it's not a sin. Second, if for whatever reason you think that you want to do something spiritual and that having physical intimacy will reduce the spirituality, which I don't think does, but he gives an allowance. And if you read the context of it, these are practical advice that he's giving couples. He says, do it for just a short while and afterwards come together. So basically what Paul is saying is, don't let anything detract the husband and wife from having a mutual life of intimacy. That nothing should detract from that. Whether they are going to church, they are preaching, they are praying, they are worshiping, nothing should detract them. But if they think that they are doing that would detract from their spirituality, it should be for a short while. Definitely not for 40 days of power, because that 40 days is too long. So maybe 3 days, 4 days a week, if that's what they want to do. Paul's advice is it should be for a short while, lest they be tempted.
So even that is optional.
Yes, it's optional. Yes.
Doc, let's talk about the shock that some people experience when they realize after marriage that the spouse that they thought they had, the reality is not what they dreamt about or imagined. How do couples weather that initial shock when you get into the same house with the person and you realize that it's not what you thought it was before?
I mean, if your courtship was done well, there will be no shock. I mean, except one person intentionally hid facts and truths from each other. But what you get to know whilst you're courting and somebody is basically what you see in marriage. It will just be a raw state of it. In other words, you're not going to your home and meeting at 5 o'clock the next day, but now you're living 24/7 with the person. So it will seem as if whatever you saw is now multiplied by the number of hours that you are together. And because when you get married to, you don't filter your views as much as when you were courting, those differences may seem real. But my view is marriage is a long-term process. So have a long-term view of everything you're going through. There are things that may be very disturbing now, but if you're looking at marrying for 60 years, you can deal with 5 years, you can deal with 10 years. You can pace yourself and work through your problems for those 60 years. But if you're looking at it for instant pleasure, instant happiness, I need to be happy now, I'm married, I need to be happy now, you're not going to be. I have said that the first 10 years of your marriage is just getting to know the person you're married to, just getting to know them. Second 10 years is adjusting to them. That takes you to 20 years. 20 years is when you start really enjoying your marriage. And by the time your marriage is 30 years, 40 years, you're really enjoying your marriage if the foundations have been done well. So it's not something that is enjoyed very early. It's enjoyed later. And so that's how you have to look at it. If you wanted enjoyment right now, you'll be disappointed. It's a 60-year job. So take your time and go through it. And by 60 years, when you are in your 80s, and you're all sitting down together, and you don't want your wife to leave you, you don't want your husband to leave you, and you're constantly together, that's when your marriage is really working.
Now, you talk about 10 years. Those who've done 10 weeks or 10 days, they should keep quiet.
Yes, because I think, we romanticize this process as if the day you get married, then you'll be the happiest person. It's a work of a union. You're trying to bring two people from different backgrounds together. It takes quite an effort. It takes quite an effort. And I'm not saying that if there is gross abuse, then stay there and just wait for 60 years. That's not what I'm talking about. We've covered that already. I'm talking about when it's just temperamental and personality conflicts and little misunderstandings, arguments that are very incessant. You work your way through.
Somebody said, on the lighter side, somebody said by the time they removed the attachments, what he got was not what he thought he had.
Yes. I mean, if you were courting and you were just amazed by eyelashes and attachments, then the wedding night would be a big shock.
But Doc, following up on that, what does a spouse do when the partner consistently insists that the marriage is a mistake, the choice they made is a mistake, keeps on confessing it?
You know, it's one of those things that sometimes for Christians, it comes because of a certain spiritual idea that God has to specifically direct something. And so if we didn't receive a specific spiritual direction, then we are very unsure whether it is right or wrong. And then, you know, when we hit a problem, we say, the marriage was wrong. I've heard people teach, for example, using the story of Jacob, that Jacob's marriage of Leah was wrong because he wanted Rachel and he was giving Leah. And I said, no, it wasn't wrong. It was right. It was, in fact, he should just have stuck with her. Because if he had just stuck with Leah, he would have produced what God wanted. Because the most consequential children of Jacob came from Leah. The third born, Levi, the priesthood, and the fourth born, Judah, the kingship and the line of the Messiah. All of them were produced by Leah. The rest, even the children of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, the most idolatrous of his children. And so you look at it, if he had just stayed with what he got on his wedding night, he would have done very fine.
But Doc, the aspect of emotional attachment will have been missing.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't his choice.
Oh, you know, he would have gotten used to it.
And develop it with time.
Yes. You would have gotten used to it and grown into it. You know, sometimes you can create mental blocks for yourself where you say, oh, this is not the person I wanted. This is the other person I wanted. You know, but that's what you got. This is what you got. And if Christ could love us, learn to love all of us whilst we're yet sinners, I believe we can love people and we can grow to be very affectionate with people that we didn't start with a strong affection for.
Definitely, Doc. There are some that started with this same perception of it being wrong, but which turned out to be great. And there are some also that were supposed to be the best that did not turn out well. So
I mean, I've seen people who were very romantic during courtship and the first few years of their marriage sadly break up. And I've seen people who struggled badly with their marriage grow to marry for 30, 40 years and be very happy and grow and their children very happy. So I think hard work works. Hard work works.
This is time with Pastor Otabil. We are enjoying this discussion about how to build a lasting marriage. And I must say that Dr. Otabil is giving us answers that are not the conventional ones you would expect. He says, if you present it to God, trust God and build on from there. Pastor Koyu?
Though culturally and socially, it is accepted that when one marries, he does not marry an individual, he marries a family. How do you manage external family relationships in marriage?
I mean, it's part of the deal. You marry, and then your spouse's family become part of the scope of the marriage. I mean, you're not married to them directly, but whatever they are and whoever they are affects the dynamics of your marriage. sometimes it can be challenging, and it needs a lot of work and a lot of patience. All in all, the two people should know that although they came from families, they are starting a family. And they should not allow what they came from to destroy what they are starting. So however they manage all the difficulties with their in-laws, they should be mindful of what they are beginning and the children that they are producing and the harmony they want to have in their home. And if they get that focus and commit to make what they are working on work, they will find a way to deal with in-laws. But it's a very difficult situation for others. Others have it easy. I've had a very good in-laws, so but not everybody has it that way, and some have to manage very delicate family issues all the time. And then sometimes you have in-laws who are intruding into the marriage, and children who are conflicted between the person they are married to and the family they came out of. All of those things are there. But I think that if the two of them decide, this is what we are building, and we are building our own family, that becomes your priority whilst you're resolving in-law issues.
Doc, let's go to something that people often refer to as their defense for their choices. The fact that patriarchs in the scriptures, in some instances, had more than one wife. We mentioned Jacob earlier on. Will that represent a biblical or scriptural endorsement of polygamy?
When you look through the biblical patriarchs, you study them, apart from Jacob and David, and if you add, Solomon was not a patriarch in that sense, but apart from Jacob and David, none of them was polygamous. Abraham was not polygamous. He had an extramarital affair, unfortunately suggested by his wife, but that was not polygamy. I mean, you can call it adultery, but it's not polygamy. Abraham was not. Adam was not polygamous. Noah was not polygamous. Isaac was not polygamous. Jacob, because he thought he was giving the wrong deal, multiplied wives. So he was polygamous. You look beyond that, you don't see much of polygamy. When Israel was going to ask for a king, one of the things God warned Israel is, if you reject me and you have a king, your kings will multiply wives. That's God warned them. And that's what happened. And so you find from Saul, David, Solomon. But even after that, you don't see much of the kings of Israel having multiple wives. If you look at the prophets in the Bible, in the Old Testament, they all had one wife. So this idea that polygamy is copious in the Old Testament is a fallacy. It's not proven by the facts of the Old Testament. So the standard was one man, one wife. There were distortions, the aberrations. Jacob, David, Solomon, all of them, look at the consequences that it brought them. It brought them very serious consequences. David himself, as a matter of fact, it was because of that the kingdom ended after Solomon. That was it. And they couldn't ever settle on who to rule them. And the whole nation of Israel, God's promise just went down. So I can understand people and their defense of polygamy from a cultural point of view, but not from a biblical point of view. It's not what the Bible endorses.
Doc, once you bring this point up, there seems to be a recent push to surreptitiously push polygamy into the church's theology and say it has never been wrong in the first place. For the benefit of our viewers who are watching and looking for direction, what would you say to them about the godly scriptural position?
Well, the first question I want to ask people, why do you want polygamy? I mean, why? Is it that the men want more women to marry? I mean, what is driving it? And some people say it's because many women are not married, and so there's polygamy. We should marry those who are not married. And I say, what if it was reversed the other way? Would the men say that the women can marry more men? I mean, is that how to resolve such a disparity or such a real social problem? Is that how to resolve it? I don't think that we bend Christian doctrine just to suit a passing challenge that people may have. And really, there are far better ways of resolving that problem than advocating for polygamy. Polygamy, as I showed in the patriarchs, Moses, just look at them. How many of them were polygamous? And you come to the New Testament, you find the same thing. Was it practiced? Yes, culturally, it was practiced in most of the societies, even in the New Testament era. But the Christian church has always affirmed, in the beginning, it was one man and one woman.
So, if a person in a polygamous relationship, marriage, becomes born again, how should the church admit such a person into fellowship? What is expected of the church?
Well, all I can say is, if you look at the example of the New Testament, you come to Christ as you are. So, if you were polygamous and you got saved, that's the way in which you were saved. Can you live a Christian life that way? I believe so. Will it hamper your Christian life? I believe so. It will limit your Christian life and the expression of your Christian life. And in the early church, you couldn't take church leadership positions, which is what most churches would do now, but would accept you into the church community. Some would be a bit more radical to say that you have to leave some of the wives and stick with one, which is always a problematic one. But I think these issues can be addressed as ethical problems within the church and how to resolve them. They're more ethical and they're not that easy to always resolve.
What about the issue of communion?
Communion, I think, if it depends on which church you belong to. You know, if you belong to a church that practices closed communion, where only a specific group of people can take communion, they would disallow a polygamous family to take communion. But if you belong to a church that practices open communion, then it wouldn't matter.
But there have been instances where, with the teaching of the word over a period of time, such people have been able to take their own decisions.
I mean, if
followed the
if a
one
person
man,
gets
one
to that
wife
point,
standard.
especially if the basis of the subsequent marriages was acrimonious, where you probably left an existing wife and quarreled, and this thing has become a very, very bitter thing. Most people, after they've grown in Christ for a while, just resolve with themselves that I don't think this is how God wants me to live, and they move away from it.
Doc, how does a Christian couple who's been married for probably 10, 15 years and they are childless, how do they manage the situation, especially with the understanding that procreation is a big feature in our marriage, both culturally and socially?
I mean, it's a challenge. It's not only a challenge to them, it's a challenge also brought on by society and its expectations, because pretty soon when you marry for about a month, people are going to be watching whether you're pregnant. If you're married for 6 months, people are going to be, why are you people waiting? And then if it's about a year, the comments become more intrusive. And if it's 3 years, they become very insulting. Because even in the church, people become very, very insensitive in these questions. And so it puts pressure on you. So even if the couple can handle it themselves, the way they're treated makes it very difficult for them. But most couples want to have children. Just by observation, I've realized that sometimes some people, for whatever reason, struggle to have children for maybe 5 years, 10 years, and then they start having children. And some just, they need intervention, just start having children, you know. And so sometimes there is a waiting period before children come, and so we have to be patient. Sometimes the people never have children. My advice is, at a certain point, if you really want to have children and you're making every effort to have children and they're not coming, you should consider adoption. And people say, well, you know, it's not, some people think it's not faith, it's an act of unbelief, doubt. I don't know on what basis that is doubt, because our whole Christian life is adoption. We were adopted into the family of God. Remember, Israel was the promise. And as Paul says, we were grafted and we were adopted into it. So it's possible for an adopted child to become the answer to a couple. And especially in our part of the world where so many kids don't have any parent, I think couples can consider that. If that is not an option, but they want to live just as a couple without a children, they can still live a very, very fruitful life and very happy lives without any children.
Talking about children, there's also another conversation about how many children a couple must have. Sometimes one party wants a different number from what the other party wants. What should be the consideration in deciding which one?
I think a couple have to decide what they want to have. And these days, I see quite a number of couples settling for 2 kids. It seems to be a very logical decision for them because of the amount of work they're doing. So, you know, you just decide 4, 6, 10, 1. Just choose.
Based on your ability and economic factors.
According to what the couple wants.
Wonderful.
I mean, sometimes you can find one party wants more children, the other party wants less. Marriage is a lot of negotiation. So you work your way through it.
But talking about negotiation, we want to negotiate for another session of marriage next week because there are issues we still want to ask about: offenses, conflict, and other nuances of marriage. So next week, please promise us another show on marriage.
The subject of marriage is very broad. I mean, we haven't touched on much today. We have actually dealt with more conceptual ideas and the context of it and the culture and all of that. But we could explore other areas, yes.
So it's been time with Pastor Otabil negotiating on marriage, and a show that definitely should be a must-watch next week.
Adam didn't know where Eve came from because he was asleep when God formed Eve. One flesh means accepting someone into yourself as Adam did. Marriage is when 2 people who have accepted each other and willing to accept each other come together. A helper is not a subordinate because God is our helper and the Holy Spirit is also our helper. A head in marriage is someone who sacrifices and lays down his life for his wife. Marriage is an equal partnership from God's point of view. Headship is the leader among equals, but not the boss. Marriage is a choice and a decision. You must not discuss your wife or husband with a third person. Be happy with your partner and enjoy each other. Don't make sex God in your marriage. It will consume you. Marriage is a long-term process. The first 10 years of your marriage is getting to know the person you got married to. The next 10 years of your marriage is adjusting to your partner. After 20 years of marriage is when you start enjoying your marriage. Marriage is not enjoyed early, but later in life. Christian marriage is one man, one wife. Polygamy is a cultural point of view, but not a biblical point of view. Do you have any questions for Dr. Mensa Otabil? Please leave them in the comment section down below. Remember to watch our next video on your screens. Stay positive.